All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Chris McDaniel's America. I, of course, am not Chris McDaniel. I am Jack Fairchild's filling in for Chris today, who is elsewhere. I think that'll be the best way we'll describe it today. But I do have a co-host with me today, and my good friend and one of the owners of the Midnight Ride, Jim Cegelski, is joining me today for this program. Jim, thanks for doing this with me.
Jack, thank you for filling in for Chris. And I'm not sure which one of us has the more difficult job. I'm pretty sure it's you. You're filling in for Chris. I'm filling in for you. So
you've got a very easy job.
Yeah, well, good.
my role here, I may or may not ask you to put on the rhino mask. It'll be a game day decision. So
yeah,
I don't know
it would
yet.
be payback if you did.
You did purchase that.
That is true.
Well, I wanted to come on today and I wanted to talk about how we see the left has started to twist everything and how they're starting to influence different medias. Now, of course, they've always been entrenched in Hollywood. We know that. They've always come up with different ways to make films deliver the message that they want them to. But what we've seen in the last couple of years is we've seen a shift. Instead of them just creating new woke content that nobody's going to watch, what they've started doing is they're taking established brands and they're trying to come out with this diversity initiative. And don't get me wrong, I have no problem with a diverse cast as long as it's serving the story or it's not just diversity for the sake of a diversity, because forced diversity is easy to tell. We have seen them go down this path countless times now. And it's very frustrating because as you watch this, as you see what they're doing, you're seeing beloved franchises get completely destroyed. And you can look no further than to the Disney company and what they've done to two of the biggest box office bonanzas throughout the years, throughout the history of cinema, when you look at what they've done to Star Wars and what they've done to the Marvel series. As you know, Marvel was a cash cow for Disney. They pretty much were printing money every time they put out a new Marvel movie, whether it was an Avengers film, whether it was Captain America, it didn't matter. It was a guaranteed hit and they knew it. Well, you go to the last couple of movies and they've started to tick down. Matter of fact, the last one, the Marvels, was a bona fide flop. It just, to me, you're seeing what they're doing here, and you have to understand this is by design to try to force feed their agenda upon folks. And they understand these established brands give them a built-in audience, or they thought it did. But people are rebelling against it. Jim, how familiar are you with Joseph Campbell's A Hero's Journey? Have you ever looked in to the explanation? Because Joseph Campbell has written about the characteristics of a hero. He's written about how you put a hero in works of literature and works of fiction, how you put them down the path of a hero's journey. Have you ever paid attention to that?
I have not, Jack. You threw me right on the spot there, didn't you?
Well, welcome to my seat. That's how Chris does me. Well, of course, if you go and look at Joseph Campbell's work, he talks about the characteristics of a hero, and he says that a hero is usually male, and according to Campbell, women typically represent creation and ultimate wisdom, and therefore do not need to make the journey. So from Joseph Campbell's teaching, he was saying that the reason why most of your hero protagonists were males because the females had already reached a certain level of enlightenment to where they didn't need to take that journey. He also said that the hero is oftentimes is of lowly birth, but may secretly have a special power or higher birthright that the hero is not aware of at the time. The hero's parents are often dead, absent, or uncaring. So again, as I start to go through this, you're starting to see familiar characteristics that you've seen in several of these movies and films that take you on this hero's journey. And he talks about the call to adventure, where the hero may receive his call to adventure. And of course, the next step after he receives the call, the stages of he goes on his departure, where he takes the call But then at some point during the story, he's going to try to refuse the call of adventure. He's going to try to refuse the call of the journey. This is something that Joseph Campbell has laid out. He talks about how a lot of these stories come up with a supernatural aid of some kind. He goes further on to crossing the first threshold that will ultimately get the hero to where he needs to be. You see these things, and these are techniques and practices that have worked throughout history when it comes to writing a story of a hero. It doesn't need to be reinvented. It doesn't need to be changed. And I think that that's one of the things that is why folks are rebelling against this woke ideology, this diversity for the sake of diversity, is the formula was already working. And when you start to change it, you take a character that has always been a male character and you turn it into a female character, for example, just for the sake of it being a female. It doesn't serve the story in any way, shape, or form. It's just being done for the sake of diversity.
Don't you think, Jack, that movie studios right now are making movies for their employees and not their audience?
Absolutely.
And it's these woke kids who just got out of college. They've been indoctrinated and they're raising a fuss. And so the executives at these movie companies are willing to take a loss to please their employees and really don't care that much about the audience anymore. And it's proven over and over again because they continue to make the same mistakes over and over again.
Oh, absolutely. And I think if they could just go back to the teachings of Campbell here, because again, all he did was take works of literature that have already been written, and he broke down the elements. And when you start to hear him lay it out, you understand this is the way they've broke down these films for years. And it was working. It was working until Hollywood decided we can put our agenda out there. We can change things. Or they simply decided that it's not diverse enough. Now look, when I was talking about some of these characteristics of a hero, outside of it being defined as a male, and he gave his reason, it's not a sexist reason in my opinion, I think it's a logical reason when you look at his reason, but when he talks about them coming from a lowly position in life, that's not just one single race, so you could employ these techniques and still incorporate whatever race of character you want to. There's no definition there where it's locked in. But they're not even following these techniques. They're not even following this because they're just putting out stories that a lot of times just don't seem to make sense anymore. And it just seems to be falling away because people aren't excited to watch the latest diversity checkbox movie. I mean, Jim, are you an avid film watcher, or are you somebody that because I love movies.
Depends on the type of film, Jack. I'm not a huge science fiction fantasy, but I've seen the original Star Wars movies and the second batch of Star Wars movies, but then I stopped watching Star Wars, and for pretty good reason. It became pretty bad.
Yeah.
I think the person who's now taken over these Star Wars films has actually come out and stated she wants to teach men a lesson.
Yeah.
And, I think the male audience for Star Wars makes up a pretty darn big percentage of that fan. So you gotta ask yourself, well, what actually is the strategy here? It used to be about making money. It used to be about making these big box office bonanzas, but that doesn't seem to be a strategy anymore.
Yeah, the person in charge of Lucasfilm is a woman by the name of Kathleen Kennedy, who proudly has run around with T-shirts that say the Force is female. Which, if you know anything about the movies, no, the Force is the Force. It doesn't identify as anything. It's just the mystical force that binds everyone around. Well, it's funny that you bring up, how the numbers here, because let me see if I can find the article here where I have it, because there's a breakdown, and if you look at the breakdown of the numbers of the folks that are watching Star Wars films, it's like only 30% women. It's 74% men are watching Star Wars against 26% of women. So again, and this is even after the sequels came out and you've seen them go down this woke path, it's still a dominated male series. So why are you doing this? Because it's not working. You're not drawing in the female audience the way that you want. When you look at the Marvel movies, it's a little bit closer in number, but it's still like 70% men. So it's, or maybe even 65% men. So it might be a little closer, but they're not drawing in the audience that they're trying to cater to. As a matter of fact, they're trying to slap in the face of the audience that made this content in the first place as successful as it is. And if you're following what they've been doing lately in Star Wars, again, I'm a huge fan, of the series. I grew up on it. The original Star Wars movie came out when I was 2 years old. It's the first movie I remember going to see in the movie theater. So it's something that's very important to me. It's something that I've been a fan of since I was a child. And even when the prequels came out, they weren't as good, but I still enjoyed them.
Right.
Because the story still was good. The dialogue might have been a problem, but the overall story still worked for me. Then the sequels came out. The first batch done by Disney. And the first movie, it got me excited again. I was like, okay, this is going to work. Even though if you listen to a lot of the critics, they say that it was kind of a rehash of the original Star Wars movie, but it was working for me. Then they came out with the second film in the sequel trilogy, which was called The Last Jedi. Completely undid everything that the first one did, almost to the point where it felt like they were intentionally trying to undo some of the threads they had started in that film. It took the hero of the original trilogy, Luke Skywalker, and it made him weak. It made him almost a coward in many levels, and put the focus on the female lead of the new trilogy, Rey, who is just good at everything, Jim. There's no struggle for her. When you meet her, she's just by herself on a desolated planet, and yet when she comes around, she's instantly able to best a strong dark side force user, and she had never picked up a lightsaber before in her life, but she's the best at everything. So that right there already cracks, because, and then when the second one comes out and she is scolding the hero from the original, you're just sitting here scratching your head, and that's when you're understanding this is a part of an agenda. This is part of what they're going for with this. And I think that's where the frustration came in as you watched this forced diversity come down our throat, because it wasn't working for anybody. That film created a bunch of division, Jim, to the point that I don't think that the series has been able to recover. I mean, the best thing they could have done was just forget that the sequel trilogy ever happened and start over. Try again.
I think the best thing they could do is just sell the franchise back to Lucas.
I agree.
I would think that's the best thing they can do, because anything in the hands of Disney right now is pretty much forced diversity, and it turns out to be a failure.
Oh, yeah. And you look at things like what's going on inside of Disney, Gina Carano incident, where she basically got fired for saying something that one of her co-stars on the same show had made the same comparison. She got fired. Well, first she got in trouble because during this whole put your pronouns on your signature thing, she had the audacity to make a joke at it and put beep, bop, boop on it instead of putting she, her,
or them.
Yeah. So, I mean, she put out there a joke at it, and they got offended. And that's when they first started the call, let's fire Gina. Well, then she put out a tweet where she was making a comparison. The conservatives are being prosecuted the same way that Jews were in Germany during World War II. And of course, that's a big no-no. Unless you're on the left side and you make that comparison, because her co-star in The Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal, made a similar comparison before she did. Nothing ever happened to him. He was allowed to do it, and it was fine. But Gina, it was a problem. She gets fired. Of course, she's now in the middle of a lawsuit against Lucasfilm and Disney over the termination. I don't know that she's going to be successful in it, but I'm definitely rooting for her, because I think she was unjustly let go of, and that just goes to show.
And she's correct.
She was correct.
Yeah.
And that's the other point, because again, as somebody, she has to have identified more conservative than the rest of them. She can't feel welcome in Hollywood.
Nope.
I mean, We hear story after story.
She won't feel welcome at any studio in Hollywood. There's no such place as a conservative Hollywood movie making business or franchise or anything else. I mean, if you're not diverse right now, you can't work in Hollywood. Even as an actor or an actress, if you're conservative, you are shunned. That's why any conservative right now in Hollywood has to hide their political affiliation, whereas left-leaning actors and actresses, they can appear at Biden functions raising millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's insane. You know, I mean, you have somebody like Will Smith who got up there during the Oscars and slapped comedian Chris Rock, and yet here he's still getting roles.
Right.
He's still getting cast. You know, physically assaulted somebody, not a big deal. If you or I had done the same thing, not only would we have been called racist because we would have been slapping a black comedian, we would have been blackballed. We would have been kicked out.
I'm not sure you're allowed to say blackballed, Jack.
That might be that might get us in trouble.
You'd get canceled right now.
Well, it's been a good run. But I mean, you see the hypocrisy here, and they continue to go down this path. And when you look at the Marvel movies, again, Jim, you're not necessarily a fan from what I understand, so you haven't really been watching those.
Really dislike comic book movies. I mean, except for that one funny one with Ryan Reynolds.
Deadpool.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I can definitely see you as a Deadpool fan. But you know how big of a hit they were, and that they were rolling. And of course, last year when the Marvels flopped, they say it's comic book fatigue. It's not. Because you're going to see later this summer when the new Deadpool film comes out, it's going to be huge. But the Marvels, they try to make excuses for it. But the problem was, again, it was a diversity checkbox movie. That's what it was. And that's all it was ever intended to be. They took a female character, a female superhero, they made her overpowered to the point to where, how can you relate to that? There are no flaws there. And that's an inherent problem in storytelling, because me as an audience member, I don't want to watch a movie about the perfect being. I want to watch a movie that I can relate to, that there's going to be flaws. If you go to the movies of Iron Man, if you go to Captain America, you can see some of their flaws. They're not perfect heroes. They're just heroes. And I think that's where they're starting to lose now, because, again, they're getting away from Joseph Campbell because they would rather figure out a way to check these diversity check boxes and continue to force feed an agenda down our throat that is just absurd when you look at it on its face. And when you break down the numbers, Marvel has actually had at least one successful female lead franchise, which was a ABC miniseries on Agent Carter. But it was well written. She wasn't perfect. She wasn't the best at everything. And that's the reason why that worked. It's not a case of people want to reject female leads. That's not the case at all. But that's what they try to say every time one of these films flops. Well, it's sexism. It's racism. They never want to acknowledge the fact that they had successes when they were doing better written material. Black Panther film was a huge success. Better written material. It didn't just feel like it was diverse.
Well, wasn't Wonder Woman must have been a success, I would say.
The first one was, yes.
So I don't think it has anything to do with a female character or a male character. It's when they start to force their diversity down our throats and basically skip a plot line to do it. That's the problem. They're not writing good movies. They're just forcing diversity on us. And I guess what they don't realize is we don't have to go watch these movies.
No.
And listen, Disney has a long history of this. I mean, I think they've just put out bomb after bomb. I mean, even you go cartoons, Lightyear's a bomb. Their Little Mermaid remake was a bomb. Yeah. I think their Snow White remake was a bomb. Every one of these movies is coming out. It's a bomb because they're not writing for the audience anymore. This has nothing to do with anything but jamming DEI down our throats.
Yeah, and people are rejecting it because, again, if it's not going to serve the story, if it's just spoon-fed to you, it doesn't give us an incentive to watch. And when you've got an audience that makes up 74% of your total viewers, smart business, Jim, you're in business, you understand that if you've got an audience that skews predominantly this way, if it's predominantly male, who are you going to make your content towards? Are you going to worry about trying, well, we got to attract more females? Or are you just going to go ahead and make the content for the audience that you already have and continue to roll in money that way?
Well, it's a part of the overall culture right now, Jack, seems to be to want to eliminate straight white males. Mm-hmm. And so if you just watch TV, your commercials, it's really hard to find a straight white male on any TV show, on any commercial anymore, on anything. I think they want to exterminate straight white males in this country. And they act like if there is one, then they're portrayed as a complete moron.
Absolutely. And it's just, that's the other thing I wanted to get into, because if you go and you watch sitcoms, you remember back in the day, you had Fathers Knows Best. You had strong male leads, and it wasn't at the expense to make the female characters look dumb. It wasn't in a manner in which they were just domineering. They were just strong. You had good fatherly figures. Now if you go turn on the average sitcom, it's just this rube who is always stupid, and the wife has to come in and save the day, because again, the message they're trying to put out there is that men are stupid.
Yeah, and normally they don't even show a real family anymore. I mean, families are also kind of, banned from television as well. But I absolutely agree with you 100% that a straight white father has to be portrayed as a buffoon, or they're not going to make any TV show.
No, I mean, and that's being done intentionally to try to drive the audience to drive the folks watching to believe that this is what is necessary. It's not reality. It's not what we see in everyday life. It is a complete farce. And it cracks me up when I see this, because they know what they're doing. They understand it, and they think we're stupid. They don't think that we can see through the nonsense. So it doesn't just pertain to Star Wars or Marvel movies. It is a broad spectrum of things that we have. I mean, how many times did they tell us, because you remember Tim Allen, who used to do Home Improvement, he came back with that Last Man Standing, and it was decidedly more conservative. His character wasn't just an idiot man, and they were constantly criticizing that show, trying to figure out a way to get it off the air because it wasn't pushing the agenda that they wanted pushed. It is absurd what we continue to see them put out as content, and they're wondering why fewer and fewer people are watching nowadays. It's because you're not catering to an audience that wants to watch your stuff. And when you cater to a smaller percentage the way that they are, you're going to get less returns on your investment, because again, you should be catering to your base, and they're not. They're hoping to grow things. And I think we're coming up close to where it's time to acknowledge our sponsors, but I do want to, when we come back, I want to talk too, because they're not just doing this in Hollywood. We're seeing diversity in the sports world as well, where they're force feeding that on. I want to come back to that after we pause for this quick acknowledgement of our sponsors.
We're going to test out my reading skills, Jack. This year has come with a lot of uncertainties. Will red-hot inflation continue? Will interest rates continue to soar? How can the Fed promise a soft landing when all signs point to another serious recession? If the beginning of this year has shown one thing, inflation is not slowing down, and the Fed is completely incapable of fixing these issues. Like millions of other Americans, I found myself asking, how am I going to protect myself and my family? That's why we at the Midnight Ride Network spoke to the folks at Genesis Gold Group, our new platform partner for the Midnight Ride. They walked me through how I can protect my savings with real physical gold and silver. Genesis makes it easy to convert your 401k or IRA into a retirement account backed by precious metals like gold and silver. Genesis Gold Group has decades of experience helping folks just like you preserve your hard-earned savings, and the service provided to their clients is truly one of a kind. Call Genesis Gold today at 1-800-200-GOLD for a no-commitment, informative consultation with one of their experts to find out if Genesis can be a fit for you. That's 1-800-200-4653, or visit them at midnightridegold.com. And when it comes to protecting you and your family's future, I'm excited to share with you another one of Midnight Ride's new sponsors, Prepper Beef. Prepper Beef offers a range of freeze-dried beef and freezer boxes with steaks and roasts made from high-quality, all-American cattle. These products are made to last for up to 20 years, ensuring you have access to premium beef for decades to come. By supporting Prepper Beef, you're not just buying beef, you're supporting American ranchers, values, and your family. Join us in our mission to eat well today and eat well tomorrow. Visit midnightridebeef.com and stock up for the future. Back to you, Jack.
Always go and check out those sponsors. I mean, we're really appreciative of them, as well as our other sponsor with My Pillow. So we appreciate every single one of the sponsors that we have out
Absolutely.
there. The Midnight Ride wouldn't happen without them.
Absolutely. We need you to go out and support these sponsors so we can keep bringing this kind of conservative entertainment to you.
Before I go into how sports is starting to check this box as well, one of the places I think you've seen the biggest effect of this forced agenda, maybe not necessarily the diversity side, because if you look at it, it is still a white male-dominated industry, but it is decidedly pushing the leftist message, and that's late-night television. If you go back to the days of Johnny Carson or even the Jay Leno era, you probably didn't know which side of the political fence they were on.
And I do go back to those days, Jack. Oh, yeah. And the funny thing is, if the president was Richard Nixon, they made fun of Richard Nixon. If the president was Jimmy Carter, they made fun of Jimmy Carter. Yep. It doesn't work that way at all anymore. They're still making fun of Donald Trump. Hasn't been the president in 3.5 years. And
they're scared to make fun of Joe Biden. Matter of fact, Jimmy Kimmel just hosted a big shindig where he had Joe Biden on stage with him, which, have you seen the video of that and how poor Joe Biden looked on?
Joe Biden looks poor every time he's on any kind of video or TV show or anything else.
Look, I feel bad for the man. I mean, I know he's not on our side, but I almost feel like, we're witnessing abuse here.
I'm never going to feel bad for Joe Biden. I'm sorry. Joe Biden has taken advantage of this country for decades now. Sure. He's corrupt. I'm just not going to feel bad for somebody who's been ripping off the American people for as long as he has.
He's a plagiarist. He's a liar.
He's dumb.
Dumb.
He's always been dumb. I can't feel bad for that man. The best thing he can do is be put out the pasture, but really he belongs in handcuffs.
Well, you convinced me. I'm no longer feel bad.
Oh, good.
But no, I mean, you watch the landscape there, because back in the days of Carson, and then when Leno followed him, it was not focusing on a political message. But if you watch Jimmy Kimmel, it is 100% a political message. If you watch that Seth Meyers guy, which I don't think anybody watches, but he is 100% a political
I think the only reason he's still in the air is because he's so left-wing.
Yeah. Stephen Colbert.
Same thing.
100% liberal.
Yep.
Jimmy Fallon, he's liberal, but he might be a little bit more moderate, but he's still going to skew that side of the fence as well.
Do you remember when he actually had Trump on? He took so much heat because he was nice to Donald Trump. Yeah. I mean, how sick is that? You're going to get blasted, and then you got to apologize because you were nice to the president of the United States at the time. It's ridiculous.
It's insane. That's where we're at when it comes to this culture that is being manifested from Hollywood. They are trying to push this agenda, and they're failing, because you're seeing Disney Plus subscription rates drop. You're seeing Netflix, as they put out bad content, you're seeing folks drop them as well. At some point, they're going to have to wake up and realize they're costing themselves money by putting this forced diversity out. It's going to be interesting in the next couple of years, but they're not stopping there. Back in the old days when I was on terrestrial radio with the Right Side Radio Show, I was one of the first ones I know of that raised the alarm flags about how ESPN was pushing a left-wing agenda. And I got told by people, no, you're just seeing things. That's not real. Nobody will tell me I'm crazy now.
Oh, no. I used to love ESPN. I love SportsCenter with the Len Berman days, and but Mike, I can't turn that station on anymore. It makes me sick to my stomach watching it.
Well, they knew by jumping into the sports arena that they had a captured audience. You're there to watch a game. You're there to see the highlights. We can push an agenda here. We can have this on this side, and you're going to watch it because you're not going to turn off sports. And for the most part, they've been right. Because even no matter how mad people got at the NFL about taking a knee, people were still watching football.
Yeah, because back in the day, if you remember, none of us knew what an a-hole Keith Olbermann was at the time. But eventually they let him speak his mind, and that's when I turned off ESPN.
Yeah. I mean, and I think what you're seeing now in sports where they're trying to drive this, Major League Baseball, they just recently decided to recognize the old Negro leagues, which terrible that they had to exist in the first place. The fact that they weren't allowed to be in the major leagues, I agree, that was wrong. If they were good enough to play in the majors, they should have been allowed.
Absolutely.
But the leagues existed, and it was a separate league. They only played 60-game seasons, maybe 70 at most. And you're comparing that to a 162 to 150-game season, depending on the year you're looking at. And now you're elevating folks that played less, played against lesser competition as well. And I know they tried to say, no, that league was on. It wasn't, because when you look at when they stacked up against Major League talent, they weren't putting up the same numbers. That tells you that the talent level wasn't as good in that league.
They had some people that were superstars on there, Satchel Paige and some of the
Josh Gibson.
Yeah, there was a handful of really good superstars that could have played in the major leagues, no doubt about it. Jackie Robinson came in, first black player, and dominated. But as a league compared to the major leagues, probably couldn't have competed with them.
No, and that's proof. But now, because they look up and they say that only 6% of the major league is African American. If you see black people playing in the major leagues, they're probably from Puerto Rico or another country for the most part. Their percentage is way down. So they think that if they're going to get this diversity checkbox, the way that they're going to do it is by now recognizing these records from another league and elevating them above old white stars. Ty Cobb, who you might say was a terrible person based on certain things you might have read about him, I don't know, because again, history is what it is. He's no longer the all-time batting average guy. That's now Josh Gibson, based on lesser stats. They've elevated him above that. Babe Ruth, I don't think, has the best slugging percentage any longer.
This is Major League Baseball doing this?
This is Major League Baseball.
Wow, I didn't even know this.
Recognized. So now Josh Gibson holds that record too. And again, nothing against Josh Gibson. I think it's a tragedy that he wasn't allowed to play in the majors. But he wasn't allowed to play in the majors, so you can't elevate his stats to this level the way that they have. And it's not going to instantly change the perception of a community where they're like, you know what, now I want to play in that league. No, it's cheaper to play basketball. Let's just be honest. It is.
Well, inner city kids are going to play basketball, be leaning towards basketball because it's made of concrete. The entire city's made of concrete. There's not a lot of ball fields in the middle of Manhattan. You just don't find it. So it just makes sense. And I mean, they keep talking about diversity in baseball. What about diversity in basketball? Are they trying to get more white kids to play basketball? And
well, if you look at the treatment of Caitlin Clark in the WNBA, I don't think they are.
I mean, I don't really understand why is it it's okay for NBA to be 90% black, but it's really bad for the Major League Baseball to be 90% white. I mean, what's the difference there?
And they've got if you look at football, it's 75% black.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, they're dominating the sports.
Here's the thing with this DEI stuff. It's the same in any profession. You play the best people you can. It should be about merit, not about race, not about sexual persuasion, not about anything else. It's like these airlines that are hiring people based on DEI instead of the most qualified pilots. I think everybody with any common sense would realize when I'm in the air at however many feet we're going to be, I want the best qualified person to be flying that plane. It's the same with sports. You want the best people playing.
100% agree. And that's the sad indictment. And here's a question for you. If Ty Cobb was a black man and he held that record, do you think they would have pushed these records over? Do you think if he was already a minority, they would have done anything to maybe rob him of a record he held? No, it's because they want to try to elevate these folks and try to, again, push out the past. That's what they're doing. We're constantly being told that Babe Ruth wasn't as good as he was, which is a fallacy because they try to say, well, ground rule doubles counted as a home run. Well, I went back and looked up, and there are no accounts of his record 60 home run season of any of them being a ground rule double. All of them cleared the fence on their own in ballparks where the wall was way further away than it is today. So it's an impressive feat, but they try to downplay it because they want to elevate something else. Again, it goes back to similar things they've done with our founders and things like that. They're trying to take away the historical context, the folks that we have for a long time looked up to, and not because of their race, but because of the accomplishments, the things that they were able to put out. That's what we were looking for all these years. Those are the reasons why we looked up to people like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. The reason we looked up to them is their accomplishments in creating this country. The reason we looked up to a Babe Ruth is because the man saved Major League Baseball after the 1919 Black Sox scandal. So we looked up to that stuff and we elevated that. But this is where they're starting to come across with this forced diversity, and they're taking it to a whole nother level now where they're trying to completely change history. Because again, you've got one league that was considered the top of the top. There was a reason why the Negro League players wanted to get into the majors because they knew it was the better competition.
Absolutely.
And again, Jim, what do you think? Do you think if Ty Cobb had been a black person, do you think they would have touched those records? Do you think they would have done this?
Of course not. Of course they wouldn't. Now, this is really, I wrote a column called The War on White People. This is part of that war on white people. I hate to say it, but they want to marginalize the founding fathers and anybody who lived in a different era than us didn't play by the same rules. Mm-hmm. That didn't make George Washington and Thomas Jefferson less great because they lived in a different era. As a matter of fact, these people should be looked up as American heroes that they have been throughout our history because they created this country that we're living in. And how anyone can't see that this is the greatest country because of those people, I don't get it. I don't get marginalized baseball players or anybody else. They're tearing down statues of great people, Teddy Roosevelt, you name it. It's the craziest thing I've seen. It's horrible living through this as somebody my age who has been proud to be an American my entire life. It's horrifying. And I'm horrified for my grandchildren and my children of what this country's turning into. How do we turn it around, Jack? That's the real key.
The first thing we have to do is we have to start figuring out ways to take back and push back in the areas where we're losing ground. And maybe that's, through new production companies like the Midnight Ride, where we're putting out our own content. We're putting out content that skews to folks with our ideology. I think it's the Daily Wire. Don't they already put out their own content as well, doing similar things, making movies that are skewed more to a different audience? I think those are the ways, and we're going to have to deal with the criticism. We're going to get hit with it first. It's going to come.
You cannot be a sissy in this business. No. And we've got to start pushing back harder than we have. We've got to start making fun of these people because, let's face it, some of this stuff, people have to be real idiots to believe that a transgender male should be competing against a female. It's the dumbest thing in the history of the planet. Yeah. Or a biological male, I should say, competing against females. You have to be an idiot to think that that's the right thing to do. But there's half this country who believes that should happen. So we got to start fighting back a lot harder. Conservatives and just people with common sense have to stand up, be louder, stop being afraid. Yeah. Stop being afraid to be canceled. Stop worrying about social media. Stop worrying about your neighbors. Speak up and be brave.
Absolutely. And that goes back to the core tenets of things that we've been preaching since day one on this show, is making sure that people understand that you've got to be in the fight. You can't just sit back and say, well, somebody might call me a name if I get involved. they're probably going to call you a name anyway.
Yeah.
Get involved. And here's the thing. If you don't, when things go sideways for you in this country, you don't have a leg to stand on anymore. You can't sit back any longer and say, hey, I wish things were the way that they once were, because you didn't do anything to maintain it. You didn't do anything to make this fight happen. And I think that's one of the sad realities of what we're watching. And you said something a second ago where half the country agrees with this transgender stuff. I don't think that's so.
Oh, it's a lot more than half.
I think it's far less. And I'll give you an example. Oregon, state of Oregon. Would you consider that a conservative or liberal leaning state?
Liberal.
There was a transgendered track and field athlete that dominated the crowd, won the big gold medal at the podium stand when he stood up there to take his medal. They booed.
No, actually, what I was saying was there's a lot more people that agree with us.
Oh,
Jack,
I thought you were saying liberal.
What I really meant. The problem is we don't speak up.
No.
Everybody who's loud about this, well, first of all, those people have a platform.
Yeah.
Whereas we have to do podcasts and create our own networks to be heard. But just everyday average people, they just want to go about their business and be left alone.
Yep.
And they don't want to get into this fight. But I hate to tell these people, they have to. They have to stand up and be heard, because it can't just be a handful of us standing up for common sense, what's right, for the founding fathers, for the basis of this country being born. It's just, we all have to stand up and start being a lot louder, actually, because the left is as loud as they can get. They're a minority, but they're so darn loud. Yep. And the people on the left, let's look at them. They're stupid. Like, they're the dumbest people ever. You got your Joe Bidens, your AOCs, your Bernie Sanders. I mean, the people on the left have always been stupid, and they've always been wrong in history. Karl Marx was stupid and wrong. I mean, even Adolf Hitler was a socialist. I mean, these people have never been right throughout history. And unless good, strong people who believe in what this country stands for start to speak up, we're going to lose the country.
Absolutely. But I see the waking up beginning, because I'm seeing folks get frustrated with things that they used to would just turn a blind eye to. And when you look up and you see folks like Bill Maher is a liberal through and through.
Starting to stand up.
He is starting to question the woke culture. He's pushing back against it. I mean, I remember back in the day when I was doing the Right Side on the radio, this guy used to be probably a weekly person that I would call out, because he would say the most absurd, crazy liberal things. And now I'm watching him and I'm sitting here shaking my head. I'm like, that's Bill Maher I'm agreeing with.
But you know what Bill Maher has realized? You can never be liberal enough for these people. They're going to keep pushing further to the left. I mean, we're heading towards pedophilia being legalized. I mean, if we continue on the path, you can never be liberal enough for these people. And that's Bill Maher has actually realized that, wait, hey, put on the brakes here. Mm-hmm. We're becoming really, really stupid, immoral, and the country's heading towards a path that can't be sustained. Sodom and Gomorrah is what we're heading towards.
Absolutely. And it starts with the culture. It starts with these things like we talked about, the pop culture stuff that we let off the show. When you start to infiltrate the things that we daily consume, the things that we're watching constantly, the franchises that we find beloved that we don't want to turn off, there's a reason why people who don't like the new Star Wars or the new Marvel movies still will show up at the theaters to go see them. There's still folks that are going to sit there because they're hoping that it turns that corner and comes back around. And it might, but it's going to take more people deciding that they're not going to watch it.
Right.
Anymore.
You don't want to. This is the one thing. I mean, we did it really well with Bud Light. Mm-hmm. They tried to force a trans person down the throats of people that just want to go drink a beer at a bar. And, these are everyday average Americans who drink Bud Light. These aren't your craft beer drinkers. These are just good old mom pop drinking beer Americans. And they're going to force a trans person down their throat. Mm-hmm. And, as I was proud of conservatives finally standing up, or just, they don't even know if they're conservatives, just regular people deciding, you know what? I just want to drink a beer. I don't want to have a trans person selling me the beer. And same with Target. When Target tried to pull that stunt with selling trans stuff to children,
Pride merchandise right up front in the store, the children's section.
It's just we have to start doing it more. No one should go see Disney movies anymore. No. I don't understand why parents keep taking their kids to Disney. Eventually we have to just say no. I mean, if enough people do it, then they'll finally get the message. But at this point here, there's too many people that are willing to just go along to keep the peace, and we got to start standing up. The left certainly does it to conservative companies. Yeah. The right has to start doing it as well.
Absolutely. And that's our hero's journey. As we talk about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, this is our call to action. Are we going to reject the call? Or are we going to stand up and fight for what we believe in? Again, yes, he wrote these principles based on works of literature, works of film, and different calls of the hero's journey. We are currently on a hero's journey ourselves. We are currently on a path to where we need to be more vocal. We need to be more engaged in everything. We need to stand up. And when ESPN is putting out documentaries defending trans swimmers swimming against biological females, we should turn that off. We shouldn't worry that, hey, they're the network that has the NBA Finals, so I'm going to have to watch it. You don't. You can turn that off. You can walk away from any of it. Is it easy? No. Last night, I'm a big Cubs fan. I know you're a Cardinals fan.
Right.
Congratulations on y'all this weekend. Last night, the Chicago Cubs were having their annual Pride Night. I didn't turn that game on. I was like, I'm not going to watch it because I know that there's going to be countless times that they're going to show something on that screen and they're going to be trying to shove that agenda down my throat. So I turned it off. I wasn't watching a second of it.
I canceled the NFL package when the NFL embraced Black Lives Matter because they're a terrorist organization. I did too. So I canceled them. And more people have to start doing stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean,
I still don't watch the NFL. I mean, part of the reason is I root for the Jets, but the other reason is I'm not going to support that agenda.
Yeah. And that's noble because people don't do that. People don't turn it off. And that's they'll complain about it.
Yep.
They'll be the first to stand up there and say, I don't like this, but they're not going to do anything to change it at all. They're going to continue to push it down that path constantly. Now, I know we're coming close to the end of the show, Jim, but there's something, we brought up at the beginning of the show that I think I want to know what it feels like to have somebody else wear the rhino.
I knew this was coming, and I don't think I can say no.
You did buy it and bring it upon me. So,
do you have a rhino of the week, Jack?
We can just always go with Mitt Romney or Mitch McConnell or any of them because they're always going to be in the news as a rhino of the week. So, yeah, one of those would be the rhino of the week, just so that way you can feel better about having to wear the mask.
You were right when you said on an earlier show, this smells really bad in here with the plastic.
I definitely told you, and sorry, Chris, this is going to be what gets us canceled. The fact that I got Jim to put on the mask. This is the last show. You'll have nothing to come back to.
No, I'll just cancel the right side, not Chris's show.
The right side didn't have a rhino mask.
No, that's true.
Well, guys, we appreciate you as always watching Chris McDaniel's America, and Chris will be back next week. He apologizes for not being able to be here this week, of course, but we tried to get it to where we could time it for him. Unfortunately, schedules didn't line up, but I hope that you still found what Jim and I were able to put forth entertaining, and we appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been Chris McDaniel's America.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan,
He's back! The My Pillow guy!
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new My Pillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit MyPillow.com.